Welcome back. We're talking about back to school. We're counting down 11 days to go before most kids go back to school here across Central Florida. And with me this morning, licensed mental health counselor Shantala Boss from Boss Wellness. It's good to have you with us again, Shantala. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you, Bridget.
You too. We had the ticker on this morning as we talked about back to school and new school campuses opening up and just the excitement around that. Yesterday we talked about some school supply giveaways. And so parents getting ready, staff getting ready, and the students getting ready for back to school, whether they like it or not. And there are lots of big feelings around this time of year.
You're right. There are so many big feelings. A lot of them are really good. A lot of kids are really ready to get back to school. I know Candace said she was ready for the kids to get back to school, but I think they're ready too. They can get pretty bored over the summer. But with change comes anxiety, sometimes fear of the unknown. A lot of kids are moving into a different grade or even from elementary to middle or middle to high. So with this comes a lot of uncertainty, even if they're just changing a grade within their school. So it's really important we start having those conversations now about what kind of things they're expecting, what kind of things they're concerned about, what kind of things they're looking forward to. And like you were saying earlier, coming up with more of a routine, starting to get them back into the groove even before they set foot in the door to set them up for success is so important during this time of year.
Yes, and when you talk about setting up for success, there are some things that we really have to start working on now with the kids to give them the best foot forward, at least physically and mentally.
Yes, absolutely. A lot of kids are mostly nervous a lot of times about peers, who they're going to see, if their friends are going to be in their classes, or maybe that quote unquote bully that they had last year. How are they going to handle that? And they just want reassurance and to talk about it, come up with plans of how to set boundaries in certain situations. As they're getting older, they have a lot of anxiety about workload or if they're going to be able to handle a certain teacher, what their expectations are. So we don't have all the answers going into school. I know we have meet the teacher, but just kind of normalizing those things, talking to them about it. Really,
Mm-hmm.
kids just want to know that they're going to be okay. And even like we were saying earlier, if the parents are calm and collected and even excited, the kids will follow suit. The first day they might
Mm-hmm.
have a little jitters, but they're going to be excited to come back and really talk about it.
Yeah. And so we talked about that getting back into the routine. So ideally, how do we get them get going to bed on time and getting up on time to sort of ease that transition getting into that first week? Because you want to start now, right?
Well, it's good to start now, even if it's starting going to bed maybe 30 minutes early. We have a couple weeks, but really the week before, really trying to get into that routine of the regular bedtime. There's going to be a little wiggle room. They're going to say, I can't fall asleep right away, and
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. But starting that downtime, turning down the lights, laying in bed, maybe reading a book, getting off the screens. And it doesn't have to be hard and fast that they fall asleep immediately, but they start getting into that routine of the self-care. Maybe they were eating a lot of junk food before bed and this was keeping them up late, so there might be some changes in diet and
Mm-hmm.
schedule. The summers are fun, but it also can be a little all over the place, so just figuring out what those routines are and expectations. We're talking about back to school shopping, getting
Yeah.
them organized, looking at their schedule, what they're probably going to be taking. Hopefully, a lot of kids are getting their schedule here in the next week or so. So it's just important that we start that now so that once they're in the routine of things, they have one less thing to worry about
Mm-hmm.
with all the change and uncertainty that comes with the first day of school.
And there's just some anxiety that is normal. There's a certain amount of anxiety that everyone experiences with different things. And so that's different than when we talk about maybe chronic anxiety or something that might be a mental health condition. Can you clarify some of that for people who might wonder what the difference is?
Well, you're absolutely right. We all have anxiety every day, and anxiety can be a good thing because it motivates us to make changes and to be successful and to keep trying to move forward. But if it's crippling us, and that would be a different type of anxiety if a child absolutely, starts refusing to go to school. I've had kids before, younger kids especially, that don't want to get out of the car or having a lot of anxiety due to other situations, other extenuating circumstances. But it's very normal for all of us to be a little bit more anxious, a little bit more apprehensive when there's something new coming up and we're not sure exactly how to have that response. I think if parents have seen some signs of anxiety in their children in the past, or they already know that their children can be hyper anxious about certain situations, it's important to maybe take some certain extra steps. But most kids, it's a pretty average normal thing that they're going to get past, and they may not feel they can, but it's what we all encounter when there's a change.
You talked about some of the interpersonal, social, emotional intelligence issues that come up between classmates and maybe sometimes feeling maybe overwhelmed by the workload. How can we talk to them about that? Not that we want to bring it up necessarily if there's nothing there, but if there's concerns there and issues coming up, how do you help them deal with, peers who may not want to be friends or some difficult situations happening in the classroom or the playground?
Well, teaching them early how to interact when a friend reacts in a way that is negative. Sometimes drama can start when there's a reaction that isn't positive, and then a child that is offended or hurt or upset and kind of feeds that. So I was actually having this conversation yesterday with a middle schooler, and she was talking about, she's very, very self-aware, and she was talking about how there's a center of drama that she knows certain kids that cause it, and then there's kind of the outlying circle. And it's not to label any of the kids, but if she's aware that there are certain kids that maybe spread a lot of rumors or kind of try to get into some trouble, not being unkind to them, not being rude, being friendly, but maybe refraining from telling them too much information about themselves, trying to stay on that outer circle and not getting too involved in any drama or things that go on. And that happens, and that takes time. But a lot of kids already know sometimes who those kids are that may trigger some of their own issues with behavior or problems with peers. So having conversations is so important, because kids are smart. They can sense when there's a situation that maybe isn't so good, but we also sometimes are drawn to drama, or drawn to situations that cause stress. So teaching them how important that is to be proactive and how they react in these situations.
And before we go, Shantala, do you help people who maybe are hearing that it is their child maybe with the behavioral problems?
Yes, I definitely work with kids and parents. A lot of times it's some behavioral modification or working with the teachers and trying to figure out what some of those triggers are so that they can have a successful school year. There's so many things that come into place, and every child is unique and different. So oftentimes it's helpful to have a counselor, an outside person, kind of support in that situation.
And what about when it comes to maybe concerns about attention deficit or things like that that may come into play? Do you help explore how to get around that or identify that?
Absolutely. And a lot of times with attention deficit, there's some anxiety, because a lot of times kids that have attention deficit, their minds are always on the go. They're always working. And sometimes it's hard for them to focus because they think so much, but it's also difficult because their thinking causes anxiety. So we definitely talk about that. And sometimes these things aren't even identified until you come into a session and start exploring different options, family history. So it's always helpful. There's also counselors on staff within schools. There's licensed therapists that can support. So it's always helpful to get a third party advice.
All right. Well, Shantala, it's good to have you with us again from Boss Wellness, and hope everyone has a great start to the school year. Thanks for giving us some tips to get started off right.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.